Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Hockey Show. My name is Roy Bellamy, and that's David Dwork of the Hockey News. I am back from vacation. Something that I direly needed. This is
Yeah.
oh my God.
You look refreshed.
I am.
You do.
Very much rested.
It's nice to see that you haven't shaved in a while again. I
Yeah.
do like the facial patch hair thing that you got going on.
Man,
I
can't
know it's
even
not
grow
a full
beard.
thing, but I do kind of like that a little better. The clean shaven Roy scares me.
I'll keep the goatee. So yeah, we're back. We're gonna do some off-season stuff. But right now, I just want to talk about the off-season, the draft, and free agency. And we have a guest today. We have the big honcho from the Hockey News, Ryan Kennedy, who's the editor-in-chief over there at that very much famous publication. So
good spot.
before we get into the draft and free agency, a bit of news happened today regarding the Stanley Cup being stuck in St. Louis. Dave, what happened?
Well, supposedly I never thought I'd be talking about a software issue on a hockey show or in a hockey story, but here we are. A global software outage has caused flights to be a mess globally. And Stanley Cup was in St. Louis for like a little over a day with Matthew Tkachuk and his family. And it's apparently still there. It has not traveled on to Minnesota, where Kyle Okposo was supposed to have a day with the Cup. That's right now, the last I saw was they're still hoping that it gets there. Hopefully he can have his day. They don't know. I would think that they're going to figure it out, but I've never heard of something like this happening. It's crazy.
That Kyle
feel bad for
Okposo, yeah, that should not happen to him.
Right? Of all the people, of all the guys, Kyle Okposo, who's waited forever to have his Stanley Cup, his name on the cup. He gets his day with the cup. He gets to take it home. He was the veteran. Like every Stanley Cup team's got their veteran that they rally around.
Yeah. Now let's get off to the offseason right now. We'll start off with the draft with Ryan. You were at the Spear, so was David, and just go over your time there during the draft.
I was super impressed, and the Sphere was obviously a big deal, especially because this was going to be the last draft under the current format. We're still not really sure what they're going to do next year, but we know that the teams are largely going to stay at home, so it's going to be more like the NFL draft, it feels like. So this kind of felt like a last hurrah. It was in Vegas, which is fun for everyone. But the show they put on, I thought was fantastic. They really used the Sphere well. The trade alerts were fun, and the atmosphere was great. So just overall, and I ran into Steve Mayer, who runs all the big productions for the NHL. I ran into him on the way out of the draft, and I had to stop and tell him. I was like, that was fantastic. Like, I thought the NHL hit it out of the park with that one.
Who do you think did well during the draft?
I really liked Calgary first and foremost. Zane Parekh was their first pick, but I thought they got a lot of value throughout. Kirill Zarubin is a goaltender that I believe could be sort of a hidden gem. Montreal did very well. The Ivan Demidov pick I thought was great for them, but also getting Michael Hage later in the first round, that really helps their forward depth for the future. So I liked Montreal as well. And then, of course, San Jose, sure, they had the advantage of picking first overall. We knew they were going to take Max Celebrini. But then to get Sam Dickinson, one of the best defensemen in the draft, outside the top 10, that was just a major coup for them. Just the way that the picks went down, we saw a lot of the elite defensemen fall. Guys like Dickinson and Steve Buyum, who went to Minnesota, and even Anton Silyev, who I thought could have gone top 3. New Jersey got him later on. So San Jose, not just the Celebrini pick, but the Dickinson pick, if just those two work out, which they probably will, San Jose would have had a smashing draft.
Let's say that they do work out, at least up to the next season. How much of a point difference do you think is going to be in the standings for them?
Well, it's not going to be a huge bump. I mean, the Sharks are still in what I like to call the trough of the rebuild. They're still accumulating assets. And, Will Smith turning pro, that will help. But this is going to be another learning year for the Sharks. They're still going to be very young. And it's very much going to be about getting Celebrini and Will Smith acclimated because, 3-4 years down the line, that could be an incredible 1-2 punch down the middle. Like if Celebrini and Smith are your top centers in a couple of years, you're gonna make some moves. Especially, you have Logan Couture as the veteran. He could very well, again, in a couple of years, just be your shutdown kind of Jordan Staal guy at that point in his career. So I like that the table's being set by GM Mike Grier, but I would still expect the Sharks to struggle most nights. And, whether Dickinson plays for the Sharks or goes back to junior hockey with the OHL's London Knights, either fit works. I think he's the rare teenage defenseman that with his size and his defensive abilities, he could jump straight to the NHL, but it's certainly not necessary.
One of the cool things that we're seeing, Ryan, for I think at least people that are close to our age, we're seeing guys that we grew up watching. Now their kids are starting to kind of show up in the NHL. One of them was drafted, TJ Aginla. Obviously, it would be tough to fill his father's footsteps as a Hall of Famer. But, what do you think the chances are that he's going to have anything close to a career like his dad?
I mean, it is a high bar, right? The one thing Tej has is he was drafted higher than his dad, so he can always hold that over Jerome, even though Jerome can show him, Olympic gold medals and Hall of Fame induction speeches and whatnot. Tej Aginla, this is a kid that just kept ascending throughout the year. I saw him at the CHL Top Prospects game, and he looked very good. And then it just kept going from there. Playing for Kelowna in the WHL, playing for Canada at the World Under-18s, where they won gold over a heavily favored Team USA. So this is a kid that, he's got all the makings, right? And the junior team he plays for isn't the strongest. So, when we see him play with more talent, as we did on Team Canada, you can really see him as that top line forward. And, he's already pretty strong. He's already got a great shot, and he's got a great work ethic. So it's all there. It's just a matter of, continuing to develop and put the pieces together. But the potential is certainly there for him to be quite a good NHLer. Will he be a Hall of Famer like Jerome? It's tough to say right now, but I mean, he's got the genes.
So before we move on from the draft, I did want to just ask you one more thing about the Sphere. I agree with you. I thought it was amazing. I don't see how you couldn't, considering just the way that the building is. It's so unique. But the way that everybody's raving about it, this was supposed to be the last year that it was like the centralized draft, right? Everybody's supposed to go their own separate ways starting next season. Do you think that since this year went so well and everybody seems to be, receiving it so well and it was so awesome and so cool to be there, could the NHL maybe be thinking about changing their minds, or are we still going to be going about the routes like the NFL has gone with everybody kind of in their own studios doing it their way?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a middle road there, which is they could have it at the Sphere or, a similarly famous building, maybe a Madison Square Garden, or maybe they do it in Toronto, where obviously it's a ravenous hockey market. The fact that the scouts wouldn't be in attendance doesn't really impact the entertainment value for fans, right? It's more for the teams themselves and, the GMs getting to trade on the floor and stuff like that. And we did see some of that at the Sphere. The only thing I would say, though, is apparently the Sphere is incredibly expensive to rent out.
You don't say.
So, yeah.
And you got to pay for all those lights.
Yeah, exactly. That might be the only consideration where maybe they don't do it at the Sphere again just because of the ticket price for the league. But maybe they continue to do it in Vegas. No shortage of venues where you can get a whole bunch of fans in there and have the players go up on stage and shake hands with Gary Bettman and put the jersey on. So I can see that happen.
Well, maybe not in a place where it's 110 degrees out during the draft.
Maybe not.
Just a suggestion. I don't know.
Just major AC situation there.
No, it's hot outside, dude.
I mean, that's where all the money's going to as well. You got cool things down in the Sphere. Let's move on to free agency. We'll start with the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. So they did what they had to do. They got Sam Reinhart extended 8 years, $69 million. They also got Anton Lundell, and they kept Dmitry Kulikov, but they They also added Nate Smith. They got the both Crests, and they lost Brandon Montour. They lost OEL. They lost Kevin Stinlin and Ryan Lomberg. But it seems like the Panthers still have enough to make themselves a good team in the playoffs. They're going to have a long run. Do you agree?
I do agree. They're not as good. Obviously, they lost a lot of depth, but they still know how to win. And I guess the only thing you could caution against is they have now gone to the final game of the NHL season twice in a row, right? Lost the final, then won the final. That's a lot of extra hockey. Yeah. And, we saw it with the rival Tampa Bay Lightning, where they made a few runs in a row, and all of a sudden, the wheels kind of fell off. And it's understandable. That's a lot of games to play. I still think Florida will have a very good regular season, and I could certainly see them go a couple of rounds again in the playoffs. It's just a matter of, will they remain healthy, right? Like, that's a big reason why Vegas ran over them in the final 2 years ago. And conversely, it's a big reason they beat Edmonton is the Panthers were remarkably healthy throughout their Stanley Cup Championship run. Can you do that twice in a row? It's tough.
The Western Conference champion Edmonton Oilers also made some moves. They kept some of their guys and got some free agents as well. How do you grade them?
I think they did very well. And, it's an interesting situation in Edmonton where, the president, Jeff Jackson, was kind of in charge of things because obviously Ken Holland wasn't returning and they hadn't named a new GM yet. I know a lot of Oilers fans are like, just give the job to Jeff Jackson. He seems to be doing great. Getting Matt Savoy, the highly acclaimed Buffalo Sabres prospect, in exchange for Ryan McLeod. I thought that was a really cool deal for both teams. The Sabres desperately need to make the playoffs this year, and McLeod can help them there. And Matt Savoy, I don't know if he makes the Oilers this year because I think you probably want him getting a substantial role, and I don't know if they have that for him right now. And you could put him in the bottom six, but he's a skilled guy, and I would almost rather see him dominate the American Hockey League for a year. But when you look at the Oilers, they're pretty much ready to run it back. They're going to – I think they might start slow, just looking at McDavid and Draisaitl's injuries, and maybe they'll be ready. McDavid, it sounds like maybe he won't be ready for the beginning of the season, but who knows? We thought the same about Matthew Tkachuk, but he was there after breaking his entire body. Yeah.
Basically.
So who knows? But I think, the Oilers are in a spot where it's going to be tough because Dallas and Colorado are still in the West, and both those teams are going to want revenge for falling short in the Western Conference this past year. Having said that, there's not a lot the Oilers need, right? We saw how good they were in the final. I think Evan Bouchard is going to be even better on the back end than he was this year. So, yeah, beware Edmonton. They're not going anywhere soon.
So another team out west that I thought had a pretty good summer, and they were already pretty good, is Nashville. When you add Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady Shea, you've already got Philip Forsberg, who had a great year last year. You've got Roman Josi. They extended UC Saros, which could make things fun with the Askarov, but we save that for another time. But in terms of Nashville, are they now potentially right up there with Edmonton as a cup contending, potentially favorite type team out of the West?
I think they're in the mix, especially because Philip Forsberg basically hasn't played with anyone his whole career, right? Nobody to the caliber of Steven Stamkos at center. I guess Ryan Johansson came close at one point, but
maybe
Steven Stamkos, we're looking at a future Hall of Famer. We're looking at a number one center. Yeah. And he's got a lot of miles on the odometer, but he's so smart and he's so driven that I think he'll be reborn in Nashville. I think he'll have that chip on his shoulder that hockey players love to have. No one believed in me. Tampa let me go. And he's a super nice guy. So I am very excited to see what Nashville can do because Stamkos will be that number one center. Jonathan Marchessault gives them another threat offensively. And again, another guy who probably is thinking, I'm going to make Vegas pay. Like they decided that I wasn't, in their future plans because of the salary cap. I'm going to get my revenge and show them what I can do. And I also, you mentioned Brady Shea. I think that's an underrated signing where, he's not the sexiest defenseman, but he's very effective. And for a Nashville blue line that already has Roman Josi and traditionally has been very strong, I think, this is finally the year where we might see Nashville, win a round. They haven't had a good run since they went to the final against Pittsburgh, and that was a while ago.
All right, before we get out of here, let me just ask, did Bill Zito get screwed in the Jim Gregory Award?
It's tough. I mean, do you just always give it to the Stanley Cup winner?
No. No. I mean, it's not even that.
It's 3 out of 4 years that he's been nominated. All he's done is take the Panthers franchise from,
Exactly.
At the time when he took over in 2020, maybe the best situation they had been in, and he's done nothing but take it better and better and better since then. Yeah. I think that he absolutely deserves it. I don't think he cares, especially now that he won the Stanley Cup. But
I think he cares now. Now that he's won the Stanley Cup, now give me my recognition.
Right. Yeah, it'd be kind of funny if he won it next year.
Yeah, it would be hilarious.
Right.
That would kind of fit, actually, why I'm annoyed about it to this point. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, good. It just doesn't make any sense. All right. Well, Ryan Kennedy, thank you for joining. I'm angry again. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
Good to see you, buddy.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.